Hey everyone, it's Dominic from the Primetime Treasure eBay store and YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for coming by to check out another video. As you can see, we are 15 hours away from my first ever episode of Primetime Live. That's my first live show. I'm excited about it. Tonight, October 3rd, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Definitely come by, check it out. Join me in the chat. There will be open-ended discussions about anything related to reselling, but I will structure it around getting started on eBay. So I'll have some tips and suggestions, and feel free to bring by your own as well. I look forward to seeing you there. If you happen to check this video out after the live show aired, be sure to check it out in my video archives. It will be linked there, and be on the lookout for other live shows. That's why you want to subscribe to this channel. You will get notifications on those, so make sure that you do subscribe anywhere where you see the subscription link in my channel. So with regards to today's video, I came up with the idea because recently I mentioned in one of my videos that I work as a board certified neuropsychologist, and some people have mentioned to me that they really like that I could bring in that psychological aspect into the reselling business and share with you different types of insights on that topic area. And so that led me to think in terms of what other ways that I'm using psychology in my reselling business. A lot of times I talk about it, it has to do with negotiations and interactions between buyers and sellers. But in this video, I want to talk more about the descriptions that we use in describing our items, because there are certain words that buyers don't want to see and will lead them to kind of quickly move on to another item. So if there's a way to use words that still describe the same thing but are more palatable to the buyer, we'd want to use those instead, because we want to keep them on the screen, maintaining their interest in the item, because that will increase the chance of a sale. Now, we don't want to lie, we don't want to deceive the buyers in any way, but we again want to use language that they are more comfortable with. And I started thinking about this, in my own professional life in terms of applying it to eBay, because one of the things I do a lot of work on in my profession is the topic of the degree of effort that patients put forth on their evaluations. And I've written a lot of professional articles about this that have been published in scientific journals, and I have my second book is coming out on this topic on October 22nd. That's not a plug, by the way. Don't go out and buy it, because it's something that you'll find very boring. But the thing I want to bring up to you about that, though, is that what I notice is patients do not want to admit that they put forth anything less than their best effort on the examination. So if you ask them, did you put forth your best effort, they'll always say yes. They will not say that their effort was bad, even though you have a lot of objective indicators to show that effort was really poorly. However, the same exact person will admit that they disengaged on the evaluation at certain points. Maybe if they thought something was too difficult or too hard. So they'll admit in that way that they didn't put forth their best effort, but you have to use a different word, because that word effort is very personal. You're told all your life, make sure you try your best, put forth your best effort. That's another thing. They won't admit that they didn't try their best. Again, that has a lot of emotion to those words to it, very personal. Whereas disengage, that sounds more kind of technical, scientific, and people are willing to acknowledge that. So it's a very interesting phenomenon I've noticed in my own professional life. And so I've thought of ways to kind of apply that to eBay, and it could be anything, doesn't have to just be eBay, but any place where you're describing items for reselling. And what are words that we could use that people will be more inclined to stick around and still look at your item, versus ones that they'll more likely just click off and move on. So let's show some examples here. I put some together. Let's start with this one. This would probably be one of the more common ones, which would be a stain. Now, I purposely have this on a white background because we could use it for anything. Let's say maybe this is a shirt, it could be any kind of garment, or maybe it's a book. Let's start with a garment. Now, People generally don't want anything with a stain on it. It's always considered a bad thing that you have a stain. You think of the word stain, you think bad psychologically. People get upset when they find out they have a stain on their shirt. They say, "Oh boy, oh look, I have a stain. Am I going to be able to get that out?" People generally think of stains as things that are permanent. They're bad marks on your record in real life. You have a stain on your record. There's phrases we have about the word stain in society. So people generally don't like that word, and so if at all possible, I really try to avoid using that word. What will I use instead? Well, I will on clothing. I will say, well, we have like for example, for here, there's an orange spot. People love well, not love, but they are much more likely to stick around and look at an item if they see that it says it has a spot on it compared to a stain. Even the word spot, there's other ways just psychologically people think of the word spot. If you think of the word spot, that's a common name for a dog. People like dogs. There's lots of dogs out there named Spot. So when you say the word spot, it doesn't automatically have that same visceral reaction that people will have when they hear the word stain. So I'll say there's an orange spot. So there is an orange spot. I will not say that there's a stain. So that's a difference there. You could use that in your listings. If it's on a book, you could still use that same word, but sometimes I'll use a longer word, like I may say that there's some discoloration on the book or on the page. It's kind of like the difference between effort and disengagement. Stain, discoloration. Very similar type of method that I'm using there. I'm still describing it accurately. I'm still saying what it is, but a person looking at it will be more likely to stick around and check out the item compared to if I use that more emotionally laden stain word. Now, there's lots of other ways stains can show up on items, and if you're selling books, one of the things that you're going to come across sometimes are that the pages in the older books like this have this these brown stains that come down the side. Now, what you don't want to say is that when you open the book that there's long brown stains on the pages. People are not going to like that. What do you use instead? You say that when you open up the book, there are signs of tanning on the pages. Well, guess what? What do people love to go out and do? They love to go tanning. People think of the word tanning. They don't think of that as a bad thing necessarily. Yeah, sure, you don't want that in your pages, but it's a lot better in terms of a word to use than brown stains. Just say that there's tanning inside of the pages. Now, on more extreme examples of staining would be something like this. Now, I generally try to avoid even ever selling items like this, but once in a while, you may come across a really great book. It otherwise looks pretty good, and maybe this type of brown staining, these spots that are all over the place on the page, maybe it's even on like one of the first blank pages, and the rest of the book looks great. I have a book like that right now where that's going on. So, this is an extreme example, but I want to let you know about a word that does describe what this is, besides saying that the book is covered in brown stains on the first page or in several pages. One stain is bad enough. You don't want to say that you have stains all over the page. So the word that you could use for this, or one word you could use for this, the technical word for this in the book industry, is called foxing. So, you could look this up. I took this actually from the Wikipedia entry on foxing. So check it out. Just go to Wikipedia. You'll see it discusses the natural process of aging in a book, and it will, get these types of, stains that happen to it. But instead of using the word stain, we'll use foxing. Another word you could use, if you'd like, is mottling. Not modeling like a model, but mottling, MOTTLING, which basically refers to that there's lots of different spots on there. So again, try to avoid using that word stain at all costs. Now, the person looking at it in their head may say that there's stains on it, but as long as you're not saying that word, the word isn't showing up, that could be something, again, that's just real helpful just psychologically. Now, another thing that will show up sometimes, and this could be in clothes or it could be in a book binding, would be a rip. People don't like things that are ripped. You just think about it in your normal life. You just say, "Oh boy, that page it's ripped." You generally think, "Well, that's a bad thing." But people are more likely to you kind of gravitate towards an item that you have listed in your description if you describe it as that there's a tear, or depending on how thin it is, if it's even maybe a little bit more thin than this, you could refer to it as a laceration. Those are nicer sounding words than rip. So just keep that in mind. This is very similar to stain. Stain and rips are things people generally don't want. They also don't want things that have damage on it. So here, these books here, now again, I'm just using books as an example, but you could use anything that you would describe as that there's damage to it. Rather than using damage, if you can, what I like to use instead is say that the item has wear to it. Or, with books, another good word to use is that it has shelf wear. People don't want, just think for yourself, do you want to buy something that's damaged? No, you probably don't. But will you buy something that has some wear to it? Yes, you'll be more accepting of that. That's the whole point psychologically. So the words we use are very, very important. We know about that just in our regular lives, that words are important. Words matter. One certain word that you say could cause you a lot of problems in your regular life, whereas if you just use a substitute word, you will, communicate the same type of message and you will avoid a lot of problems. I'm sure you all could think of examples of that, and you've probably had conversation with friends, family, spouse, where someone might have said to you, well, if you just didn't say it that way and said it another way, then it would have been okay. So it's the same kind of philosophy that you could use and employ in your reselling business. Another thing you want to avoid, especially if you're selling electronics, or toys or something like that, anything that uses batteries, you don't want to say that an item is broke. What you say instead is that it's not working. No one wants something that's broken, but not working for parts only. So you're just selling it for parts, and you'd emphasize that. But people will say, okay, well, I think I could repair it, I could fix it. But saying that it's broke, again, that leads to all sorts of thoughts in people's minds that there's, things that are, maybe structurally damaged inside of it, where there really might not be. It just might be there's something functionally wrong with the item that just needs to be fixed. And, a lot of people out there are handy, like to take on little projects, or maybe they just need a part and they'll pick it up. But try to avoid that word broke. That's an important buzzword to stay away from. Another thing, if you're selling things in boxes, like my Funko Pops, this would be a good example right here. Sometimes they'll have some crushing on the bottom of it, and you want to avoid the word crushing. Instead, use the word dented, or say that there's some indentations on it, as opposed to crushed. Now you can see here, there's also some crease marks, and that's okay. You could use that there's crease marks, indentations, but try to avoid using the word crushed. And you think about it, crush, right? That is a very dramatic word. There's certain words in our vocabulary that just, convey all sorts of bad thoughts in your head, and those are the ones you just want to avoid and stay away from. Indentations, okay, that doesn't sound as bad as something being crushed. So try to avoid the words that have a lot of drama associated with them. Another thing is that if you're selling board games or any items where there might be something missing, like let's say you found a Monopoly set, it doesn't have the thimble, rather than saying that the thimble is missing, or one of the cards is missing, people don't want things where something's missing. But they will sometimes take something that does not include something. Okay, so this is how you use language to your advantage. You're saying the same exact thing, but you're avoiding these buzzwords. Very, very important to do these things. A lot of people don't think about this. The other thing I want to tell you is stop saying, if you're going to use a word, like let's say you did use the word stain, stop using it over and over 20 times in your listing. If you're going to say it, just say it once. Don't repeatedly say it over and over, okay? And lastly, another one I want to point out to you, because sometimes we have items that have holes in it in the clothing right along the seam. People don't want things that have holes in it. That's generally thought to be bad, something that's ridiculed. If you think about it, if you have a hole in your pants, if you have a hole in your sock, people often point that out and laugh at you that you have a hole in your clothing, right? So instead of that, we want to say that there's an open seam. You don't want to say that there's a hole in it. So these are ways that you can try to avoid using these types of words to help increase the sale. Now, by the way, where will I use the word stain and hole and rip and all that stuff? I will use it, but where I'll use it is when I tell people that my item doesn't have those things. So I'll say my book has no rips, has no has no rips, has no stains, has no holes, things like that. I'll use all of those buzzwords to say that my item doesn't have those things. But when it does have those things, I'll use the substitute words. So now those are, about 10 or so examples. You may have some other ones that you use, and if so, I'd love to hear them. Drop those down below in the comments section. If you have any questions about anything that I mentioned, feel free to ask a question. Hope you liked the video and you liked those little psychological insights. If you did, make sure you hit the like button. Again, please subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Make sure you come to the live show tonight. Check me out in my Facebook group. That's the Facebook Reselling Resource Center. Tons of tips and tricks, and be on the lookout items of the day. It's almost 3,000 people in that group now. It's crazy how much it has grown. So I'd love to have you as a member there. Just look down below in the description section and you will see a link where you could join. Follow me on Instagram at Primetime Treasure, and I look forward to seeing all of you tonight at the live show. Take care, everyone.